Now, Nabila Ramdani joins me, French journalist and commentator. Nabila, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. Now, you heard what Douglas said there, quite moderate given some of his comments on this subject in the past. He wasn't fully endorsing this, but he certainly wasn't criticising it also. What is the view in France of this development?
Well, thank you for having me on, Ian. I mean, the first thing I would say before anything is that a criminal trial is opening in Paris tomorrow, focused on the horrific events of January 2015, which saw 17 people from all kinds of backgrounds, including Muslim, murdered in the most barbaric manner possible. There is a tendency during debates like this one to accuse anybody who stands up for the rights of minority groups of immediately being pro-terrorist if they are critical of a magazine like Charlie Hebdo. So I would like to say from the off that I despise violence of any kind, and especially the kind of terrorism we're focusing on this evening. Now, on the subject of the highly inflammatory cartoons that incite hatred and violence against Muslims, I would respectfully tell you that I'm against them. I heard Douglas Murray saying that Charlie Hebdo lampooned pretty much everybody, Christians, Jews, atheists. But I have massive respect for Christians, for Jews, for atheists, and I would defend their right not to be persecuted. Egalitarian bigotry doesn't make it right. Now, the history of those 12 cartoons that are being republished tomorrow is hugely important. We're not talking about the kind of witty satire that British readers are used to seeing in Private Eye. In fact, these depictions of the Prophet Muhammad first appeared in 2005 in a Danish daily newspaper. The Prophet Muhammad, who is revered by millions around the world, is depicted clutching a bomb and a knife. These were not original Charlie Hebdo cartoons. They were simply ones that were designed as an expression of intense hatred of Islam, its followers, and all it stands for. And these are gratuitous cartoons. Now, I love
political cartoons are often gratuitous. They can depict politicians in all sorts of terrible ways, but no one would seek to ban those.
Well, Ian, to be perfectly honest, I love the cartoons in Private Eye and The New Yorker, for example, because they are witty works of art. Frankly, I have never laughed at a single Charlie Hebdo cartoon because they are at best bland and at worst disgusting. They present Muslims as a whole, as vermin, as subhumans, as the enemy within and the fifth column, who do not deserve a place in society at all. This is the very definition of bigotry. Now, the strength of feeling was such that there were riots in the Muslim world leading to deaths, and those who despise Muslims knew they were onto something. Now, the provocation intensified, and wicked extremists on both sides of this controversy, and I use these words wisely, both sides took advantage. And in this sense, the cartoons were pure incitement to racial and religious hatred that led to intense violence around the world and indeed in France. This is an offense. You may also remember a horrific picture a few years ago of a little Muslim boy whose dead body washed up on a beach. Charlie Hebdo infamously...
Alan Kurdi.
Absolutely, mocking Alan Kurdi and his family. So this is the kind of material that we're dealing with. By having been born and brought up in Paris, I have an insight into Charlie Hebdo that perhaps many of your listeners don't. And I can tell you that its primary target in recent years has been Muslims. As a matter of fact, the founders of the magazine itself have admitted that their agenda was an anti-Muslim one. Now, I'm coming to a crucial point here, which is the point of the law. Which Douglas Murray wrongly said that these cartoons are perfectly irrespectable in the eyes of the law. It couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the French authorities underestimated this, and rather than using anti-hate legislation, of which there is much in France, the French allowed this war of extremists to carry on, to the extent that they announced that the Charlie Hebdo offices had been turned into some kind of fortress and that the baiting could continue. They even offered funding to the magazine. It was state subsidized. Now, in the meantime, convictions were being handed out to others for expressions of hate against Christians and also for anti-Semitism. So the basic point is, instead of using simple laws to stop all this, members of France's secular establishment, ones who are intensely anti-Islam, allowed it to carry on. The cartoons that you can see on the front page of the magazine are not funny, they are not entertaining, they are old, they are unoriginal, but what they are, without any doubt whatsoever, they are hateful, they are designed to poison relations between the Muslim minority and the rest of society, and that is undisputable. I absolutely believe in free speech, I absolutely condemn terrorism, and I see no reason whatsoever why basic laws designed to spread hatred, designed to stop the spread of hatred, cannot be implemented. Let me give you a key example of how rotten the whole situation is. Paris prosecutors this week opened an investigation into a French magazine called Valeurs Actuelles, which published 7-page a cartoon strip actually depicting a black woman MP as a naked chained slave. Danielle Obono was born in Gabon, and she was quite rightly hugely angry about this abject racism, and the state is supporting her. Now, Charlie Hebdo regularly published cartoons depicting black people as monkeys and indeed as slaves, and yet miraculously is given a free pass. Can you imagine, Ian, anybody in London going into a pub and sounding off about black people looking like monkeys? Do you honestly think that this could be defended as free speech? Of course it couldn't. It is vile racism. And Charlie Hebdo is still producing the awful material in a Fort Knox type secret address. Now, they even have a panic room and allegedly will be defended by police officers in case of any trouble arises. Now, this is not a normal situation, especially in a civilized, advanced democracy. It would never be allowed in Britain, and yet it extraordinarily still exists in France. Now, this is not about allowing terrorists to win, not at all. That is a deeply cynical and dangerous argument used by extremists. My arguments have nothing to do with the threat of terrorism. They have everything to do with common decency and, most important of all, the rule of law.
Well, Nabila, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.